Okay, so welcome everybody to the annual report webinar for 2026, talking about 2025 statistics. My name is Andrew Nierenhausen. I'm a librarian at Yellowhead working in collections and resource sharing. I'm also joined by a bunch of Yellowhead folks today, and Zara and Sarah from Library Development Services here are going to be monitoring the chat as we go along. So the purpose of today in this webinar is to give a general overview of the annual report and the resources that Yellowhead provides to you to help fill out some of those sections. So when we're done the webinar today, hopefully you'll know where to go for all of that information, how to fill out those key sections of your annual report, and who to contact for guidance if you run into anything that you're unsure of. I will be using some screenshots of the annual report as we walk through and go through this presentation. But after that, I'm going to do a live demo of a couple of things. We'll take a look at running the actual annual report in Polaris Leap. We'll also take a look at the intranet page, click on some of the links in there, show you what's available, and we'll have a quick look at the PLSB website, so you can see what's there, and you'll be familiar with all those places and where to find the information you need. And then at the end of that, I'll do my best to answer any outstanding questions that you have. Um, if any questions come up as we go along, throw them in the chat. I probably won't answer them right away, but when we get to the end, I'll go through those questions and you can ask any other questions you have. And if there's anything that we don't answer today or aren't able to answer, please reach out to Ask YRL, and we'll definitely get those things answered for you. And I'm going to pop my camera off as we go along, free up a bit of space here. Okay, so that's what we just covered there through the introduction. So, about the annual report. The annual report is collected by the PLSB, the Public Library Service Branch of the Government of Alberta, to get a sense of province-wide library activity during the previous calendar year. So with the data that they collect, they produce something called the Public Library Statistics document for Alberta libraries, and you can actually view those statistics on their website. It's an interesting tool. You can use it to do comparison with other libraries in the province or in the region of similar size, and you can see how they're using the data that they collect from you. It's a few years behind. I think they're up to 2023 or 2024 now, but that is where they consolidate that information. The annual report is also a great way to share your successes with PLSB and to help demonstrate the value of libraries, do some advocacy for what's happening at your library and big things that happened over the year. And it also, gives that information to PLSB to maybe do some advocacy on your behalf. But completing the annual report is also a requirement to receive your operating grant funding, which is a very important component of the report for your library operations. And the annual report is also technically filled out by the library board, not the library manager or director, although you might be the person who is consolidating the information and entering the data. When you go to submit the results at the end, it's going to ask you to confirm that your library board has certified the data. So your board actually needs to pass a motion to approve the survey and the report and that data. So you want to make sure that you are communicating with your library board throughout the process and make sure that they're aware of some of their responsibilities as well. And the deadline is February 28th. It is February 28th every year. Regardless if it's a leap year or anything like that, they always put it on February 28th just for consistency. So you have about a month left to fill this out. And before we actually jump into doing the annual report stuff here, I want to take a moment to chat about some of the questions and concerns that some that come up every year, and then a couple of questions that we've had this year. So, firstly, this is one that I think I've heard every year, but PLSB is not concerned with whether your numbers are going up or down. They're not looking for perfection in this survey. Uh, the purpose of these reports is to get really broad, province-wide sort of snapshot of library activity in the province. So there's no need to try to pump these numbers or to make them look more impressive. Your funding doesn't rely on these numbers getting bigger every year or anything like that. We just want to report the data as accurately as possible to PLSB. So that's a question that comes up every year. Um, this year, there's been a bit of confusion around some of the data that Yellowhead is providing for annual report. It might look different from the data that you're seeing in other reports, like the statistical summary, or if you're running them in Simply reports. The reports that we ran on January 1st and sent out to all of the libraries were incorrect. So I've sent out some follow-up emails about that. But any report run after that date is correct. Um, the reason that even the correct data in those reports might look different from something like the statistical summary or Simply reports is because those reports are asking different questions. So the annual report that you would run from Polaris or LEAP is built specifically to the criteria of the PLSB survey. So a really clear example of this is your circulation numbers. They probably look a little bit higher in the statistical summary than they do in the annual report. And that's because the statistical summary is counting all of the physical and digital circulations that occurred through Polaris, while the annual report is only counting the physical circulations. Because that's what PLSB asked for that particular section of the survey. So you can see how they're reporting two slightly different things. So the easy answer to this is that the annual report that we run in Polaris and in LEAP should probably only be used to answer the PLSB survey. It's built to that specification. However, um, I understand that you might want to run the same numbers for both levels of government. You want to report the same thing to your municipal government as as the provincial government, PLSB, and you don't want to rely on two different sets of data. That is totally fair point. At the moment, we have an explainer document on the internet that tells you exactly what kind of data you're getting out of the statistical summary report. And we're going to be creating a very similar document for the annual report so you can be totally clear on what those numbers mean. And this will also be added to the annual report intranet page going forward, and hopefully a comparison between those two reports. If you do have any questions about how those numbers on the annual report are being calculated, please reach out to me. I can walk you through and tell you exactly what you're getting from that data. So that is a lot of preamble about the annual report. So let's jump into actually filling out the report. So getting started with your annual report, you're going to want to gather up all the information that you'll need to fill it out. So you can find a list of resources on the YRL intranet. There's a really long link there, but if you go to the intranet, right now it's actually on the homepage of the intranet. It's in the What's New section, but you can also find the annual report page under Operations and then Annual Report. And then on that page, there's going to be links to the PLSB website and PLSB content, as well as all of the YRL provided statistics. And I should also point out that YRL provides a bunch of this information, but we don't provide everything that you're going to need for the annual report survey. There are some questions about your library functions that we don't provide, so I'll touch a little bit on that as we go along. The other thing that you're going to need is a LibPass login, so your username and password. Yellowhead can't provide that. So if you are new to the library, maybe you never received one of those logins, or you don't have those credentials saved anywhere, um, you will have to contact PLSB to have those reset. On the PLSB annual report page, there's contact information for Jen Pringle, who is the person at PLSB who handles this stuff, and she can provide you with the correct information. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later when we get there. So this is what the annual report page on the intranet looks like. And again, we'll do a live look through in a little bit here. But there's a couple main sections. First one is going to have links to the PLSB website. Um, there is also mention of a reference key here. So that's a document you'll find when you log into LibPass that's going to go over a lot of the same material that we're covering today. And it kind of just explains what each field is asking for. The second section here is the information provided by YRL. And we're going to go through each of these in detail, but information on how to print your annual reports, links to wireless statistics information, so your Wi-Fi sessions for the library, how to count your electronic equipment and the circulations for your electronic equipment, what your total website visits were for the year, in-house circulation reporting. We'll get a little bit deeper into that. And then we actually have two new sections on here. Unfortunately, the screenshot I took is missing the newest one. But number 6 there is e-content. So there's a couple different ways that you're going to look at e-content this year, and we'll take a look at that when we get there. And then also number 7 that should be here is your public workstation usage. So we got some data from DeepFreeze. We have DeepFreeze installed on public workstations across the region, so we can provide you with your public workstation data as well this year. And then the last section there is just links to the annual reports webinar. So at the end of the day or tomorrow, that link should be updated with this recording, and then we'll have more information for webinar and training for next year there. So a little bit more about the annual report. So the annual report survey on LibPass has a number of sections that we can see here. All of the previously recorded information from your library, so everything that was entered last year, will be there. Some of those sections might not need to be updated at all. So your library address might not have changed. Maybe your personnel didn't change. And some of that might need a little bit of tweaking, just depending on changes that happened over the year. The main areas that Yellowhead provides data for are those ones bolded in purple there. So that's collections, circulation, library access, and public workstation and Wi-Fi sessions. So those are the areas that we're going to focus on today. But please do reach out if you have questions that fall under those other categories. We might not have the exact answer for you, but we can help you work it out. Okay, so let's dig into what the actual annual report is going to look like. So on the left side of the screen here, we have a screen capture from LibPass from the PLSB survey. And now on the right side of the screen, we have the annual report from Polaris and Leap. So the annual report from Polaris Leap is designed so that the categories align directly with the PLSB survey to take any guesswork out. So in most cases here, you're just copying directly across and things should look exactly the same. So for example, we can highlight here, print items acquired. So you can see we're using the same language as the survey. Non-print items acquired. And this is going to go through each of these categories. There we go. So electronic equipment for loan is an interesting one. So this is for stuff like your Wi-Fi hubs, laptops, mobile devices, e-readers, any sort of technology devices that you have available at the library. Because of the way that different libraries organize things, there isn't always a consistent way to pull these numbers. Some libraries have this stuff cataloged in Polaris and others don't. So the easiest way um, to get a count for these devices is probably just to go around and do a manual count of how many laptops you have available for loan and things like that. Um, when we get into circulation, it'll get a little bit trickier um, to figure out how often things are circulating. If you have it in Polaris, we have some instructions for you to run to figure that out. If you don't have it in Polaris, then there's going to be some estimating involved, and we'll talk a little bit about estimating for the annual report as we go through here. So we'll take a look at collections. So e-content is a pretty simple one. You can mark this NA, not applicable, because of the nature of e-resources and how they get licensed at the regional level. YRL is going to report these on your behalf because we also fill out an annual report for Yellowhead, um, right? Because your library board is not specifically licensing something like Libby that's done at the regional level. However, um, sorry, your physical collection here, that is also going to be included on the annual report. Um, if your library board does contribute additional funding to Yellowhead for e-resources, you can mark that here. So for example, if your board gave $5,000 to Yellowhead to buy ebooks, that's where you would put it. If they didn't, you can just mark not applicable there. So the circulation also aligns with the information on the annual report. So what is this counting? So um, circulation is counting checkouts only, so no renewals, and it's counting total print. So total print is based on material type, so book, large print, paperback, magazine, things like that. Non-print is going to be non-print physical, so think things like Blu-rays and DVDs. And then ebooks and e-audiobooks there. That is something um, that's something that's on the internet page, and we'll take a look at that when we get there as well. So for interlibrary loan, the report is calculating the circulation of items that you borrowed or brought in from TRAC and other libraries in Alberta and libraries ILLs that you lent or sent out to other libraries. They are also asking for ILL circulation outside of Alberta. So this is a little bit trickier to capture, and Polaris might not capture every circ here. Um, we know that sometimes libraries do sort of ad hoc lending to libraries outside of the province. Um, so right now, feel free to use the data in the report, but if this is something that you keep track of, um, you can also add this manually. You can do estimations based on a period of time if you're keeping track of some of this information. And I can also mention the notes field right now. So next to each of these fields, there's a little notepad and pen. And if you click on that for any of these, you can provide additional content or context. Sorry. If there's anything that you want to say about the field, um, if you're a little bit unsure or you had to estimate a number, you can put a little bit of extra context in there for PLSB. Next is in-library use or in-house circulation. So you can see on the screen there that there's actually two different ways to report this information. You can, if you use the in-house circulation in Polaris or Leap, um, you can that will show up in your annual report, and you can just put that number in. Very easy. If you don't use that function, and we'll talk about that function in a minute here, you can do a typical week estimate. So this would be just keeping a piece of paper at the desk and tallying anytime you find those in-library uses on tables around the library or anything like that. Count that up for a week and then multiply by 50 to provide an annual total. PLSB uses this multiply by 50 to account for things like stat days and holidays like that. And for any of the fields here that require an estimate, if for some reason it's not captured in Polaris or whatnot, you can use this same method. So keep track for 1 week, what they call a typical week. So, not a week that has holidays or unusual events taking place in the library, and then multiply the total for that week by 50, and that will give you your annual total. So the screenshot we have here that's going to pop up, this is what in-house check-in looks like in Polaris. I'm going to show you what it looks like in Leap at the end of the presentation because Polaris isn't going to be around for too much longer. But this might be what it looks like if you're using it right now. Okay, card holders. So this is an interesting one. And a good example of one of these fields that is different than something you might see in another report. So, despite the name active cardholders, it is not based on the number of people that have memberships at your library. This number is about activity. So, this is defined as patrons who check out physical materials at the library or who have checked out Overdrive and Cloud Library materials through the pack, which is something they can no longer do. So that would only be counted for the first part of the year. So active is reporting patrons who transacted during the year, even if their cards later expired. They could be expired right now, but they had activity, so they're counted as an active patron. PLSB, it doesn't look like they're asking for inactive or expired patrons anymore in the survey, but I can explain those to you as well. So inactive patrons are those who expired during the year. So they started with a valid card that expired, but they did not check out any materials. And expired patrons started the year expired and ended the year expired and had no transactions in between. So hopefully that explains what those categories are. So visits, this is going to be for visits to your library, both physical and virtual to your library website. So we do collect visits to your library website, and we'll take a look at that on the annual report page on the intranet. For in-person visits, PLSB gives you some options here. So again, you can do an actual count. Some libraries have things like people counters that count anytime somebody, comes through a door. But you can also do the same typical week. You can tally visitors for a week and then multiply that by 50, and that's going to get your estimated total. PLSB is perfectly happy with that. For our websites, so this is what it looks like. Our website information, again, I'll show you on the annual report intranet page, the link to this, and we'll take a quick look. But what you're looking for here is the sessions column. You want to total up those sessions. That's going to be all of your monthly sessions, and that'll give you a total number of website visits for the year. So when you're looking at the data for your library, you might notice that some months have a very high number of views. We get a lot of questions about this. These numbers are caused by bots. Bot activity, botnets, things like that, that are just kind of trawling the web. Um, Unfortunately, so we use Google Analytics to track website data, and bot activity is counted like any other traffic to your website. So we're not able to differentiate. Um, I won't get too technical here, but you can see under views, this library probably has a typical monthly views somewhere around 150 to 200 views. And then they have a couple of months where they, skyrocket up to 20,000 views. But we can see that their sessions remain pretty consistent throughout the year. So that is the number that you want to use. You want to count up your sessions, total those, and use that number. Public workstations and Wi-Fi. So you can find information about your Wi-Fi sessions on the internet. Um, we track those on the monthly statistics page, but there is also a link directly from the annual report page. So if you look at your monthly e-resource statistics or Wi-Fi statistics, that's the information we're talking about. When you get to that page, and we'll take a look later, you just select your library from the drop-down menu and look at the Wi-Fi session. And the number that you're going to be reporting is that total public Wi-Fi sessions on the far right there. So in this case, it would be 1,110. For the number of public workstation sessions, we're now able to give you that data through DeepFreeze. So you can find a link to that on the annual report intranet page. Um, DeepFreeze wasn't installed on every computer by the start of last year. So not every library is going to get a full year of data. But what we've done is we've taken all the available data and created a monthly average. So you can easily make an estimate for what your annual use was. You can take that monthly average and fill in any of the blank spots, and that'll give you a full year of reporting data. Okay, and then changes. So there were no major changes to the annual report this year, which is nice. But every year, PLSB asks a library trends question. And so this year, unsurprisingly, the trends question has to do with AI. They want to know, does your library board have a policy on artificial intelligence usage? So you can answer this honestly. They give you a couple options in the dropdown. This is just information gathering across the province to get a sort of a sense of a particular issue. I think last year's was a question about whether or not you had seniors programming in your plan of service. That's the kinds of questions that they're asking here. I also wanted to share this screenshot. So if you've logged into LibPass, this should be somewhat familiar to you. So you can see here, PLSB has actually created their own walkthrough video. So in that first column there, they've got a bunch of instructional material there. That second link, survey and annual report walkthrough video guide, is really comprehensive and really useful. It's about 90 minutes long, so it's a pretty long one. But they'll walk through every field on the report, including the ones that we didn't talk about today, the things that Yellowhead is not providing data for. So that is a really great resource for you to check out. They also have that survey and annual report reference key that you can see there. And that's going to also, it's a document that's going to explain those fields. And then they have a frequently asked questions section, which is also super useful. Okay, so now we can take a bit of a tour. We'll do a bit of a live demo for some of these things. We'll take a look at the intranet, the PLSB website, and we'll do a little bit of work in Leap here. I am just going to check some of these chat messages really quick before we hop into that. Okay, so question from Nancy. Does a user need to log off of the internet session for deep freeze to capture accurate numbers. So my understanding of what deep freeze counts as a session is every time it logs on. So even if you have it set up as like a guest profile or something like that, that log on is going to count as a session. Um, I know we do have Cybrarian coming this year, and I believe that that is going to count sessions in a slightly different way. Um, but Deep Freeze at least gets us those sessions. Before it was just that weekly tally, typical week, and estimation for the year. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so this is the annual report intranet page. So if we actually just go back to the home page here, you can see right now we have annual report in the What's New section. So we can click on that. You can also find it under Operations, and it's right at the top here of Reports and Statistics is Annual Report. So we have this little explainer banner on here just to let you know that the report that we sent out on January 1st contains that outdated data and should be rerun, but that any report run after that, so if you were to run that report right now, for example, the data is going to be accurate. So that's just a heads up about that. So we have our PLSB section here. I'm going to open this page, but we'll take a look at that page in a minute. So let's go through some of the sections provided by YRL. So how to print your annual report statistics from Polaris Leap. This actually just provides your Leap instructions. So it's been updated. And this is going to be a step-by-step walkthrough of where to find the reporting. And we're actually going to go and run this report in just a minute here. So you'll get to see an example, but this document does show you step by step where to find that report, what parameters to put in, and how to run it. So all of that's there. Okay, for your wireless statistics, we're going to click on this. Okay, so this is our monthly statistics dashboard that's got a bunch of e-resource statistics and patron information, stuff like that. But what you're looking for here is your Wi-Fi sessions, and it's going to be the total public Wi-Fi sessions down here at the end. And you're just going to select your library from the drop-down, and you can get that data there. I can see there's a bunch of questions popping up in the chat, so we'll just take a look at that. So Brett has asked, follow up to Nancy's question. So if we leave the guest profile open on the public computers, it will only log that particular computer as one session. I believe that is the case. I need to check with technology services, but I believe that is how that works. Oh, and Stephanie's in there answering that. Perfect. Okay, instructions for electronic equipment for loan. So you can see here, if your devices are not cataloged in Leap, you'll have to do a manual count and sort of estimate those using the typical week estimation. Otherwise, there are some instructions here on creating a record set and figuring out the circulation for those. Then we have our website visits. So this link just brings us to previous year website visits based on our Google GA4 Analytics setup. And you'll just select your library from the listing here, and it's going to give you all of your sessions. If you want an easy way to tally this, you can click on these dots and you can export the data, and you can just sum them in an Excel or a CSV file, or you can go through with a calculator and tally those up. In-house circulation. So we mentioned that if this is a function you use, it will just show up on your annual report through Polaris Leap, um, and you can just enter that data. Otherwise, you'll need to do that typical week tally. When we go take a look at Leap, I will show you where this function is if you want to start doing it for this year. So then we have these two new sections here. This is going to be your e-content and statistics for the annual report. Let's take a quick look at this. So this sort of breaks down three different areas on the annual report. The first being the e-content section. So this is the licensing of e-resources that I mentioned. This is the section that you can mark not applicable. You can disregard that section. Library contributions. This is going to be if your board has contributed a dollar amount for additional e-resources, you can enter that there. And then in the circulation section, there you're going to have your total print and your total non-print are going to show up in the annual report, but your ebooks and your e-audiobooks are not. And I'm going to show you where to find those. So we close that. The next link here in section 6 is digital circulations for annual report. And so we have just tallied up your sum e-audiobook and ebook circulations for all of the available e-resources. So you can just use these totals and put those into the annual report. And then we have the public workstation session. So this is the deep freeze stuff that we were just talking about. So we'll take a look here. Again, you can see that there are some gaps. Not every library had deep freeze installed first thing at the start of last year. Some libraries took a couple months for that to come on. Some libraries aren't open as often in the summer and don't have activity, so there's a bit of variance there. But what we did do is we created this monthly average column here. So if you need to fill in for months that you didn't have deep freeze active, you can use that monthly average there. Okay, so that is the data that Yellowhead provides, in addition to the annual report, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And then we just have that annual report webinar section. So let's take a look at Leap. So the first thing in Leap, really quick, we'll take a look at your check-in. If you want to start doing in-house check-in, you just go to the check-in screen. It's going to default to normal check-in, which is what you're using most of the time. But you can set that to in-house. Anytime you find material just sitting on a table or something like that, you can check it in here. Excuse me. And then that data is going to be in your annual report that you run, and you won't have to do an estimate for it. Okay, and then we're going to open up and run the annual report. So you might have done this in Polaris in the past, but we're going to be moving pretty much fully to Leap here in February. So what better time to show you reporting in Leap? So it's going to be under Utilities and Reports and Notices. And it's going to ask you to sign in here. And this is going to be your Polaris credentials. I think you can use both your Polaris and your Leap credentials. I've tried using both. Okay, so I have some reports favorited. You can see here, there's a favorites tab. I have the annual report favorited, so it's just going to be right here on the front page for me. If you don't have it favorited, there's two ways to find it. The first way would be to do a search. So you can actually just put in annual report here. And you can see a bunch actually pop up. The one that we want is the most recently updated one. So we can see annual report updated December 2025. You can ignore these ones from previous years. You can also find the report by browsing. This is the same folder structure that you would have seen in the Polaris reports. So you can see we would go to Polaris, we would go to custom, and below these folders, annual report is the first one here under the paginated reports. So I'm going to click on that and we are going to select a year. So we just want to run this for 2025. You can run this for previous years. I think it's only, I don't know if 2021 and 2022 will work correctly, but the last few years, if you run it for those years, it'll give you the data for those. But we're going to run it for 2025. I'll also point out that the way libraries are organized in the web reporting, at least in this report, is by region. So we're going to get all of the Marigold libraries first, then we're going to get all of the Northern Lights libraries, then we're going to get all of the Peace libraries, then we're going to get a bunch of schools, and then we're going to get Yellowhead. So Yellowhead is pretty far down the list, just in case you're looking and you're unsure of where your library is. And so we'll just run that report and you can see it takes no time at all. It just generates and we can save that in whatever format, probably a PDF we want, or we can print it directly from here. And all of that information is going to be available for us. Okay. So I'm going to pop back here. We'll put up our questions screen. I see there's a couple things in the chat here. Um, Still questions about deep freeze. Is there a way to have a timed log off? I'm not sure about that. Stephanie would be able to answer that. Um, that might be something that's coming with Cybrarian. I'm not sure. I haven't used Cybrarian before. Um, I had talked to this with about this with another library recently about having timed um, session resets, I guess. So if that's either Stephanie can pop in and answer that, or we can get back to you with that. I'll make a note because you're not the only library who has asked about that. Yes, session limits will be a feature of Cybrarian, so that's definitely something that is coming soon. Okay, does anybody have any other questions about the annual report, the PLSB survey, anything to do with this year-end reporting and data?
I'm going. Andrew, sorry to interrupt. There was a question from Lindsay.
Mhm.
This year there is a section for e-news and periodicals which were not on the data sheet, so I'm sure that's the kind of question that she has, or it's an
Okay,
information statement. Yeah.
let me pop that open so I can get that question. Um, e-news and periodicals. Yeah, this is a difficult one to count. Those show up on your monthly statistics report, but we can't get you circulations for some of those. For something like Press Reader, we get YRL wide circulation data. It's not broken down by branch. So what we do provide in the monthly reports is authentications, which is a little bit different. So that's anytime somebody is um, signing into the resource. So you'll get that one sign in, but it's not going to count every circulation that they make. So right now, that's sort of the best approximation that we can give for something like e-news and periodicals, because I think Press Reader is probably going to be the bulk of that activity. Josie has raised her hand.
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to add to that answer that Lindsay, in our annual report, so the YRL one to PLSB, um, it specifically says for YRL because we report all the usage of all the databases and digital content as an aggregate. So we'll take, we can get like the consumer reports logins, but we can't get it per library, right? But we can get it for the whole region. So we report that, and then we report same for ancestry and so on and so forth. And it specifically says in our annual report to include, like, we include the circulations for Press Reader and for Overdrive, which would include the periodicals, but it doesn't want us to include the Press Reader amounts. So, not the amounts, the circulations, but not like the total collections amounts. So, we don't include that. Um, So worst comes to worst, you could always just put a note in there to say that the region provides the circulation statistics on your behalf for Press Reader and for the Overdrive e-magazine usage. I don't know if that helps. You can feel free to write that in the chat. But that's kind of the best we can do right now with that. And unfortunately for Press Reader, we don't even license that. PLSB does, and that's the main news source. So we don't have a lot of control over getting those stats for every single library individually. Does that help answer your question? I
Um,
think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
no, no, you go ahead. I was just going to read
I'm
out.
just gonna say, I think you could do either. So whatever you feel most comfortable with. You can count the monthly login suppress reader and fill it in. You'll probably be a bit, that number will probably be a bit underrepresentative of your community's usage of Press Reader, but you can do that. Or you can leave it blank and write the note. I would say whatever you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect example of how to use that note section. So you could provide the monthly logins to Press Reader and say, this is the data that we get from our region. We don't have circulations, but this is our best estimate, and that should be good enough for PLSB. Okay. Any other questions, um, concerns, things like that? Give you all just a moment just in case. But either way, if there's any questions that you have that we didn't answer, or there's any questions that come up in the next month or so while you and your boards are working through this, you can reach out to us at AskYRL at yrl.ab.ca, and we'll help you figure that stuff out. I'll also note here actually that Jen from PLSB. You know what? I just realized I didn't take a look at the PLSB site for you. So I'm going to pop back there really quick. Um, PLSB is actually um, sort of booking times. If you need to talk to someone from PLSB, you can reach out to Jen and schedule a 15-minute call just to answer anything that you really, really don't understand. But we'll take a look here. So from the intranet page, we went to this link to the PLSB website. And so this is what is on the PLSB website. It's not a ton. They're just letting you know it's due February 28th. There's a link to the LibPass portal, which is where you're going to actually fill out the survey. Jen's contact information is right here, so you can send her an email as well. And then a very brief explanation of filling out the survey. And down here is a bit of the background, and you can actually see the Alberta Public Library directory, and the public library statistics. So these are the things that are created with the data that you provide in the annual report. And that's pretty much it for the PLSB website. Okay. Not seeing any more questions here, so I think we'll call it there. Um, so thank you to everyone for showing up and asking some good questions. Again, please reach out if you have any other questions that pop up, and we'll talk to you all soon.